This is the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast, your source for the strategies, systems, and insights you need to turn your dreams into your destiny. Every week, we dive into dynamic conversations as our host, Nicole Greer, interviews leadership and business experts. They're here to shed light on practical solutions to the challenges of personal and professional development. Now, here's your host, a professional speaker, coach, and consultant, Nicole Greer.
Welcome, everybody, to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. My name is Nicole Greer, and they call me the Vibrant Coach. And I have another amazing, talented, unbelievable guest on the show. And so let me tell you a little bit about Mark. Mark is a management executive focused on the unique challenges facing leaders of small businesses. Are you working in a small business with challenges? Those two things. Okay. And so he can help. So I'm so glad he's on the show today. And he has held an abundance of C-suite, say that 3 times fast, C-suite roles in technology. Okay. So don't miss that. Not only did he have his own technology as a C-suite member, but then he was trying to fix everybody else's. This guy's amazing. And he can also be reached at Budzinski@gmail.com. And he wrote a book. Look at this book he wrote, everybody. And he sent me one in the mail. It's called Peer-to-Peer Culture. So today, Mark is going to talk a little bit about this. And I'm so glad you're here. Mark, how are you?
Well, very well. And I'll tell you, at the risk of sucking up, I've been really looking forward to this opportunity to talk to you. I've been a fan of the podcast, and I would say, without hesitation, your listeners, they get a lot of nice content from who you have on the show. So thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted to have you here. And so you've been working in small businesses, you've been in the C-suite. What are all the C positions that you've been in? A lot of times when I'm teaching, I call you guys the C's and the O's and the E's and the O's.
Yeah.
So what are all your letters you've had?
Well, yeah, you make a good point. General management for the last decade or so call it CEO, for lack of a better vowel that we can put in between the C and the O.
Right.
But I really cut my teeth, Nicole, through the years in sales and marketing. So VP of sales, VP of marketing, chief revenue officer, those kinds of roles, which, to be honest, really shaped my thinking about general management. Because when you're in a sales role, thinking about customer acquisition, customer satisfaction, obviously they roll over in a pretty acute way into general management.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And well, the old saying is nothing happens till something is sold. And that is absolutely true. And then the second problem is, oh, we sold it. Now, how do we get it to the client and make them happy and buy another one or another thing? Right. So that's the whole trick. Well, I love the fact that you wrote this book. Let me tell everybody again, because I said it really fast earlier. Peer-to-Peer Culture. This is the book. You can get it on the Amazon. It'll be in the link down here. All right. So when you think of the notion of culture, because that's my gig, culture in the workplace, how do you conceptualize your point of view?
Very insightful question to kick this off. First of all, kudos to you for that. But I would go so far as to say it goes beyond passion. It's very personal for me. And I say that because I had the opportunity to manage a number of companies, but the last one that I managed, it was a software company in the business-to-business paradigm. So we had salespeople running around, we had developers making the software, customer sat service people making sure customers were happy. And the product was perfectly adequate. There was nothing wrong with it, but there were a lot of products in the market that were doing what we were doing, right? So how did we succeed to the level that we did? And I think it's undeniable. It was about what you call culture. It was about the way people behaved in the workplace. So it's the sort of thing that, at face value, well, culture's nice, culture's great. Isn't it feel good to be part of a good culture? It was deeper than that. And I think that's where the personal take comes from. We had very aggressive goals to grow the company. We had anxious investors looking over our shoulder. Having the people prevail was everything. And I think I learned really through that endeavor, I really learned 2 things. One is that culture can be prescribed, meaning we can articulate what we want it to be and actually translate that into the behavior that becomes prominent. And I think your listeners, if they reflect on their careers, right, a lot of times culture is sort of organic. And if you're in a really small company, that organic culture probably reflects the personality almost of the founders, right? So if they tend to be autocratic, or they tend to be more committee based in the way they make decisions, those things ripple through to culture pretty quickly, and people kind of catch on to the act. If you're in a large company, right, if you're in a Microsoft or some ginormous company, culture tends to take on the organization that you're in, right? So it's your department, it's your building, it's your floor, tends to have its own organic thing. I think when we talk about a small to mid-sized company, that's really the ideal place. And that's where I lived, right? When still live, where you can articulate the culture that you want and actually exercise the reality, if you will, the way people actually have it go down. So you implement the poster, right? So again, go back to the big companies, the poster in the lobby, the catchphrases like "we love our customers," the bumper stickers and stuff like that. Fabulous ideas, right? But in reality, is the way that a customer experiences your firm consistent with "we love our customers," right? You think about all the different ways a customer interacts with a company. When you buy something, it's a salesperson. When you get a bill, it's from the accounting department. When something breaks, you call the service desk. Now, these are all separate places where you interact with the firm. And so, do we really love our customers, right? Well, in the case of a mid-sized company, I think you have an opportunity to not just say it, but to actually do it.
Yeah, I agree. Always what I do, Mark, is I listen to what people say and then I like want to highlight things. And one of the things that he said is people behave according to the culture, right? So behavior and culture, like what if you go to Italy, how do people in Italy behave? I don't know. They eat pasta, maybe they talk with their hands. That could be a stereotype. I'm not sure. I've got to get to Italy, Mark. They speak Italian, right? They have a language all their own, right? And if you go from Sicily to Rome, there's going to be differences because those two cities actually have their own little culture, right? You can go to Naples and it'll be different. So those are the three I want to go to, Mark. But what he's saying is that it's a people thing. Culture is a people thing. And that is why Mark's book is called Peer to Peer Culture. It's about people to people. And the other thing that you said that I thought was so good is you said you can articulate it and then identify the behaviors that embody the culture. I want to stop right there, though, and ask you a question about that, kind of follow that energy. So, articulating the culture, who does that and how do you articulate it? What do leaders do to get that in place?
Yeah, leaders roll all the way up, right? So I take the point of view that it starts with the CEO, and
I
sometimes,
agree.
and not to say that others, HR professionals, the other senior managers and mid managers don't have a role to play. We all have a role to play, but I think to articulate it from the top does a couple of things. One, it expresses the seriousness of what's going on, right? This is not just a poster. This is not a nice to have. This is an intrinsic, critical part of the way that our organization is going to operate. Number one. Number two, it sets the tone in terms of by example, right? So be careful what
Oh,
you ask for, you might get it. The senior leader has to behave in a way consistent with what we're asking others to do. Again, everybody plays a role. And I think, again, in larger companies, the HR professionals get it almost an unfair ask. Define the culture, implement the culture. It's helpful and it's important. So I don't want to dismiss it, but it's in and of itself insufficient, right? You've got to have you've got to have your practitioner leaders, the ones that are on the ground doing the work, exhibiting the behavior. And to the extent we can
mhm.
articulate it, that helps in the job interview, that helps in the employee assimilation process. It helps in the way that we bring clarity to interacting with customers and partners. Everything becomes sort of clear. The fog lifts, and we all know how we're supposed to behave.
I love it. Okay, and don't miss. He slid an oldie but a goodie in there. He said it's this leading by example thing. People are like, what do leaders need to do? Lead by example. That it's been around for forever and it's still true today. So I love that. Okay, and I love your little quote. This is not just a poster. We have to be embody the culture. All right, I love it. And then you teased out one more thing I don't want to miss in that first little bit that you were talking about is you said it comes from the senior leader, whoever is in charge, the personality of that person. Sometimes if it's a small business, a startup, that person's bringing this huge energy and attitude and behaviors to the party. And then you said if it's a big company, you could have several different cultures under one roof. And I saw a diagram one time, Mark, where it had a big circle and it said culture. And then it said cohort, cohort, cohort,
Mm.
cohort, little circles in the big one. And it was saying this culture could be a 180. This little cohort culture could be a 180 from this one over here. And I think that is absolutely true. So
Right.
it could be confusing. People have been in the marketing department and then they went to over here. Oh, wait, what happened? My company just left.
Right. Well, I tend to think in sports metaphors, and so not to over jock the
That's
broadcast here,
good. We like the
but
sports. It's all good.
teams typically have a culture, right? So a football team, a baseball team, they tend to have a culture that's consistent with the way that they want to play, the way they want to create competitive advantage, the way they want to attract and keep players on the team. So if we think in that analogy, like a company is like a team, well, that's more like a small company, and you can get your head around they have an opportunity to have a consistent culture, right? If you think about a big company like the league, like the NFL or the NBA, it's like, oh, okay, this is not a simple thing. This is a conglomerate, perhaps. This is, at a minimum, this is a mix of different functions. So inevitably, though, those organizations do have leaders, right? So if it's functional, sales, marketing, engineering, or perhaps it's Eastern region, Western region, perhaps it's Europe versus America. I mean, come on, there's obvious cultural differences in the way that different parts of the world perceive themselves in the workplace, what they expect from a culture in the workplace, to what extent they can bring their sort of self-interest or they have to leave those at the door, right? There's differences around the world. But I think back to what you're saying, the idea that a senior leader, however we organize it, right? The coach of the team, the something that the folks in the organization have a direct relationship with, right? So it's not ethereal. It's not just some across the pond executive that's talking about culture. If I happen to live in Amsterdam, it's the people I interact with day in and day out.
Yeah, for sure. And I love your football analogy. So I'm all about the sports. I don't play them. And when my husband's watching football, I'm usually reading a book or a magazine, but it's okay. I'm keeping up and we are together. So that's important. But it's like, I know that the Carolina Panthers are playing football and I know that the Seahawks are playing football, but they're playing their way, their culture. The locker room is different. So it's really about getting these leaders on the same page, is what I think. Okay. All right. So you wrote a book. Why did you decide to do that? Sounds like you're busy enough. You're running the IT thing, you're doing all the stuff,
Yeah,
you're
well, yeah,
developing culture.
I manage a firm called Clean Data today. That's an advisory firm in analytics, but I find that the way people behave and the way that analytics comes together, there's sort of almost like a violent collision between data and people's behavior, right? Certainly in the modern day. Frankly, Nicole, I just had an opportunity, right? I was between day jobs and I'm like, you know what we did to grow a company, put the founders or the investors in a position where they could exit successfully. And we had such an amazing dynamic experience where people just
Oh,
felt they were committed, they were enrolled. And you're going to think I'm making this up, but over the course of 7 years, we didn't lose one person to involuntary turnover. Nobody left, right? So we had to fire a few, and that was largely due to non-compliance with the culture as much as competency in their job. But
ooh,
but the idea that culture was so important, I thought, you know what? Let me reflect. Let me try to almost reverse engineer what we did, how we did it, and try to capture the themes of that. And those themes, as I thought about it and wrote it down, were really fivefold. The first was trust. And we talk about trust and culture all the time, but I think we had a unique spin on it in the sense that it was so explicit. And we essentially developed our policies and the way that we interacted with our employees and our customers from that frame of trust. There was, secondly, exorbitant emphasis on teamwork. And that teamwork had, again, behavior that went well beyond the poster, right? So we had an opportunity to define what we were all after together and chase it together. So, how we did that, we can talk about momentarily. But teamwork, number two. Number three, and you don't always see this in culture, certainly not explicitly stated, and that is what I call empathy. Having empathy for customers, having empathy for each other, and how that manifested itself in the way that we were successful to essentially work together. The fourth attribute was honesty, and I really mean honesty most directed towards tough communication. So when you think about confrontation and how do we deal with rough situations where it's not just peaches and cream, right? How do we deal with that? So there was an honesty dimension to it. And then the last one I call dynamic action. That was really about how to be swift with decision making, and underpinning that was what I call unambiguous communication. So you think about corporations that love their acronyms, their little secret speak about things, their catchphrases. We would challenge ourselves all the time not to do that, right? So if you want to say something, say it explicitly. We're not talking about customer engagement models. What the hell does that mean? We're talking specifically about some set of actions and some decisions related to interacting with customers, right? And again, I suspect your listeners, if they reflect on their own careers and the meetings that they're in and the nonsense that goes on, where we're all hanging on to these phrases and some are pretending we even understand what they are, but difficult endeavor. So trust, teamwork, empathy, honesty, and dynamic action. That basically defined the culture. And as I wrote it down, it's like, oh, yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, fantastic. And don't miss this, leaders who are listening. You might have a little book inside of you, right? Share with us what you're learning, right? And don't miss that he said, I had a space where I could reflect. And I will tell you, every piece of research, Mark, that I ever read about what do leaders need to be doing, reflection is like number one. Stop. What's going on with you, your team, your company, your customers? You have to stop and think. A hot second.
And you suggest people writing books, right? There was never an intent on my part to go Harry Potter, right? There's not a bestseller thing I was trying to do. It was literally just writing it down to a large degree for my own well-being. And the fact that you can organize your thoughts like that and then be crisper, certainly in the way that I operate today in my advisory firm, right? We're much crisper about the way we talk about things. And I think that in and of itself is its own benefit. Don't be afraid to write.
Yeah, of course. And don't miss this. Mark sits down and he talks to somebody he's going to work alongside. He can hand them this book. This is how I think about things. And a lot of leaders will say to me, Mark, why don't people think the way I think? And I'm like, because you haven't, back to his word at the beginning, articulated how I think and how I see things and how I want us to roll. This is how we need to roll. So I think it's fantastic. So congratulations, by the way. So fantastic. All right. So let's tiptoe through those 5 and highlight some things. I'd like to do that. Would that be okay?
Yeah, by all means.
Okay. Trust and teamwork are fabulous, right? And I love what you keep saying. It's not a poster. And you know why Mark is saying that? I bet. I'll roll the dice here. Ready? I'm rolling the dice. I'm betting on myself. Back in the day, in the 90s, early 2000s, there was this place called Successories. And they would have these posters you could buy and hang around your office. And one of them said, teamwork makes the dream work. Like, it was a poster. It probably sold millions of copies. It was a picture of, I don't know, people at Harvard sculling or something.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
Is that the poster you're talking about?
Yeah, well, I kind of am. Yeah, I mean, there's a trust and teamwork are like motherhood apple pie. It's like, who wouldn't want that,
Right.
But you don't just say it and it happens, right? So how do we communicate as senior leaders in a company that we trust our employees? Well, first of all, we tell them. So I became famous for giving trust at the door. You think about in our personal lives how trust has to be earned, right? You don't just walk around trusting people. So that was one thing that was pretty explicit. So we're going to trust you. And people are like, really? And once they got that, there was a burden associated with that trust. It's like, oh my gosh, there's no hiding, there's no storytelling, there's no, I can't get away from this, right? I'm going to be trusted. So we implemented a set of policies. All corporations, all organizations have policies, right? So one
Sure.
that's in vogue right now is the work from home thing, right? Coming out of COVID, all organizations have something to say about this, right? And we were in this mode before, certainly before COVID, but I think it applies today, which is if you're going to trust your people, then trust them. You want to work from home, work from home. You want to work from your mother-in-law's guest bedroom because you're there, do that. You're in a hotel, do that. And if a middle manager says, well, no, Mark, it's important that we, for this marketing project, that we collaborate. So our people are going to come in Thursdays and Fridays. Good for you. Come in Thursdays and Fridays, right? But there shouldn't be, in my opinion, a prescriptive notion. It was so bad, Nicole, early in my career, I worked for Intel, and I can pick on them because I know this culture has changed over the years. But in those days, Andy Grove, the founder, he actually had the late list that was kept at the front door. So
Oh,
if you were
mercy.
there past 8:05 in the morning, you were on the late list. You got an email from Andy. So what do people do? They game it, right? Okay, you want me there by 8? I'll be there at 8. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to the cafeteria and get a coffee and talk to my colleagues, right? So yeah, they came to work, but did they really come to work, right? The idea that you can establish policy, another good example is, in my opinion, is travel policy. And big companies, okay, I'll give it to you, you have a different set of problems, but certainly medium-sized companies, again, think of your personal life. If you and your husband are getting ready to take a trip and you're looking for a good fare, and there's an opportunity to upgrade your seat to premium cool class extra legroom, and the upgrade is $10. You look at your husband and you go, hey, it's only $10. We should do this. There's $20. We got a better seat. If the upgrade is $200 each, you probably tough it out with some cramped knees. But the point is, you make your own decision. By definition, in your own personal life, that's what you're empowered to do. Well, why don't we do that in the workplace? Why can't we tell our people, you know what? Our travel policy trusts you. If you get a $10 upgrade, buy it. If you have a $200 upgrade, don't buy it. How just apply your own logic as you would, right? So those are examples of setting policy where people go, oh, wow, they really do trust me. And so therefore, I expect the same behavior from you as the employee when it comes back. Now, you mentioned trust and teamwork together. I really do think of them like peas and carrots. They go together emphatically. And teamwork, again, it's not rah rah, we're all on the same team. And the poster, like you say, has the picture of the
Rowing
team.
across Harvard's.
Yeah, I mean, come on. So if we're on the same team in the workplace, the first thing I discovered was teams need scoreboards. So again, go back to my sports metaphors, right? You're at the basketball game or the football game. There's no ambiguity about where we are in this game, how to score 7 points for a touchdown plus extra points. We're losing 14-7 at halftime. Everybody can see it, right? In business, it's not always that simple. In fact, I would argue often it's not that simple. So let's develop, first of all, a scoreboard that says, what are the corporate goals? What do investors want? What do senior managers want? And let's build that scoreboard in such a way that we're all seeing it. And I don't care if you're in customer service, engineering, marketing, whatever. But I actually took it a step further when it comes to actually putting my money where my mouth was. I developed a bonus program where I paid every employee across the board, so from janitor to VP of marketing and everybody in between, on the scoreboard itself. So in our case, we were about revenue growth and market share. So we assign scores associated with those. And every month, everybody in the building could see, where are we? Did we hit our goals? And if so, they got a piece of their pay paid immediately, immediate satisfaction from that effort. And wow, I would describe this to people, out in the wild at a cocktail party or something, and they're like, this is madness. So you pay your engineers like a sales commission. I'm like, no, not really. I pay them based on the goals of the company that at that point in time happened to be sales. And you know what? They were enrolled. Their to get a product to market on time with the right features, important for sales, right? Customer service, the easiest customer to sell to is the one you already have, right? So how do we make sure that customer sat is at a high level? So everybody felt their connection. So again, football analogy, the left guard is blocking, very different than the tight end who's running down the field catching a pass, right? So we're all doing our roles. That's not to dismiss the competency of what we have to do as professionals, but if I make a block and we still lose the game, I don't run around the locker room. Wasn't I great? Look at all the blocks I made, right? We're all feeling the sense of, oh man, we lost. We have to do something better. And maybe I, as a seasoned left guard blocker, maybe I need to help the right guard blocker with some of my technique. I take a proactive stand to try to nurture and help that person. Do I bring other ideas to the table about the team at large? Hey, my observation about what I'm seeing on defense as I'm standing on the sideline is such and such. So the point, Nicole, is enrollment, right? If we can create real trust and real teamwork, and again, if we can not only say it, but we put policy in place that demonstrates we're serious about this. We put pay plans in place that demonstrate we're serious about this. Next thing you know, you've got an infectious culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this idea of the scoreboard being up. And here's the thing that I also find, Mark, is that people don't understand how their role connects to the revenue growth or the company's growth or the customer satisfaction. It's like you said, all the way from the person who is like your janitor, the engineer. When you do good, this is how it affects the customer, right? Like we can't invite the customer over to the home office or wherever if it's not clean, if it's not cleaned up. And I think that's a big part of a vibrant culture, or don't miss this, we're talking to Mark Budzinski on peer-to-peer, right, cultures. If you don't tell them, they just don't know. Some people just don't understand how it all works, right? And another thing is when you tell them your job connects to the bottom line, then they get it, and they get some business acumen that they might not have had. And the last thing I'll say about what you said that I think is important is I'm a big believer in open books. Like, are we making money? Where's the money going?
Right.
People want to know.
They sure do.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
no, totally. We were transparent, and I am transparent in the firm I work with today at Clean Data.
Mm-hmm.
You make a very good point, right? So the sense that people want to feel connected, isn't it? It's like a human, humanity.
Right.
Action,
I'm part of the
right?
success.
People
I'm not just cleaning
want
toilets.
to feel connected. They want to make a difference. They want to matter. And when you can tie everybody together and say, we all matter. So I don't care if you're blocking, throwing passes, catching passes, we all matter. And we can talk about that with transparency on an ongoing basis. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. No question.
Yeah, love it.
Are you ready to build your vibrant culture? Bring Nicole Greer to speak to your leadership team, conference, or organization to help them with their strategies, systems, and smarts to increase clarity, accountability, energy, and results. Your organization will get lit from within. Email her at nicole@vibrantculture.com, and be sure to check out Nicole's TEDx talk at vibrantculture.com.
So in your book, you talk about empathy. That's one of the 5. So why is that important in a peer-to-peer culture to have empathy?
Yeah, it's really a subject that I take a lot of, I'm just personally attached to, right? It makes a massive difference, and I don't think it gets talked about out in the wild nearly enough. It all started from a very, sort of selfish point of view, which is, frankly, I absolutely loathe the notion of negotiation. So when I was in all these sales roles, sales leader roles, and so on, negotiation is inherently part of what you do, right? You have to cut the deal with the customer. And wow, people put their hats on, they come to the table, I'm the customer, and I'm supposed to get the better of the deal. I need a good deal. The vendor comes to the table with their hat on and say, no, we got to manipulate them, if that's what it comes down to get them to buy this thing, to get them to sign up for a 5-year subscription as opposed to a 1-year subscription, right? So my sales goals are such and such. So you enter into this concept where we're trying to play this game, right? We're trying to outmaneuver each other. And I just find it distasteful, right? It's so mean-spirited to operate that way, right? And I'm not sure I'm alone when I say I loathe negotiating, right? If you just get honest and you say, getting ready to go buy a car this weekend, everything's great until that opportunity presents itself where you've got to go deal with the manager and no.
Right. You sit down with the finance guy
Yeah, and what's the first
or
and what's the
gal.
first question your neighbor asks when you pull in the driveway with your new car? Oh, did you get a good deal? What kind of deal did you get? Right. So we're conditioned, I think, just in society to have this I win, you lose, or at least I win more than you won. And I just think it's all crap, right? At the end of the day, can we take an interest in the other person? So in the case of a customer,
Yes, we can.
what is it they need? Why do they need it? And as I started to read books about this subject, there's a guy you probably know, Carl Rogers, who was around in the 1950s, who did a lot of
I'm
good.
not that old, Mark.
Yeah. Well, maybe you've seen the movie, but he had a very distinct point of view when it came to dealing with other people. He called it unconditional positive regard. And translated, that just means in plain old slang, forgive me if I just drop a cuss word here, it means give a shit about what the other person has to say, why they're saying it. And if you apply that to the workplace, right? Everybody has a point of view that they're trying to represent their organization. They're trying to represent themselves and their job, so that a purchasing agent perhaps may need to shave 5% off of the already agreed price in order to sustain their sense of they're doing a good job. Like, what do people need? And what I have found is if you can talk to people with this unconditional positive regard and you're sincere about it, obviously you can't be putting your own facade on. You got to be sincere. But if you are, wow, do people warm up to this? And customers will confess, other departments in the building inside, other people will confess, you know what? I have this point of view and this is why. I'll tell you one of the internal things that I found to be really powerful on this subject, and that is the relationship between a sales organization and a marketing organization. So marketing tends to, in most companies, be responsible for, of course, branding and all that, like who are we, but ultimately getting new customers interested into the door. So demand creation, lead gen is the term that's used. And so those leads are important for the marketing organization as measured by, well, I have to have so many per dollar, per week, per fortnight, per this, per that. And there's all these stats about how many leads do I bring in. But that doesn't matter if the salespeople aren't acting on those leads to actually get them turned into some kind of business. So I think for the salespeople to have empathy for marketing, this is not just to annoy you when they bring you bad leads or unqualified leads. They're actually doing this to help. Maybe we should be working together more proactively and more cooperatively. So if sales could better understand the motivations and the way marketing people think and the way they put their programs together, and vice versa. When the marketing team goes, wow, we've generated 300 leads. I don't know why revenue's not up. It's not our problem. We've generated the leads. Must be them. That's not helpful either, right? So how do you get people to work more acutely together, trust, teamwork? But I think empathy is big, right? The fact that you can understand each other's point of view sincerely and act on that.
Yeah. And really, as I'm listening, like there'll be no trust, there'll be no teamwork if there's no empathy. It's almost like the empathy is kind of the linchpin part of your peer to peer culture philosophy. Because if I think everybody in revenue thinks it's my fault we're not selling, they're pointing a finger at me. I don't like them anymore.
Yeah.
They
Well,
don't have any
yeah.
empathy for me. I don't like them. No trust, no teamwork. So when you call for something, I'll just take 3 days to get it to you.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, totally. That's
Yeah,
the game. I call it gaming, but it's yeah. People
right.
people behave in all kinds of funny ways when you
Yeah, they
lose
do.
these attributes.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing, I think this unconditional positive regard, wrote that down, I circled that. I'm going to go search it up, Roger. The other thing, when you think of that unconditional positive regard, there are some skills to empathy, like how to build rapport, understanding people are different. Like we want everybody to act like us, and they don't. They never will. Stop. They want everybody's different. And like I've worked with people that are really straightforward. Like they've got an opinion on everything and they tell it like it is and they don't want to hear your story and they don't want to talk about the weather. Well, in 58 years of being on the planet, I've figured out that it's not personal.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right about that. If again, I go back to teamwork and scoreboard, if we're all looking to get to the same place, then by definition, our intents are sincere. So even though you
Right.
express your intent differently than I do, or perhaps you don't even express your intent, I just see your behavior and I listen to your words, we have to assume positive intent, right? And I think that's 70%, if not more, of the battle right there, right? This other person does not have it in for me. They're not trying to take the organization in a different way. So my job is to understand that, right? And the questions are always about, well, why and how? So you have that point of view, great. Why do you have that point of view? And when I
Yeah.
understand why you have a point of view, whoa, do the floodgates open, right? My opportunity to
Hmm.
actually work with you. And then you feel heard, you feel understood, right? You're like, okay, this Mark guy, I like him. He's a good guy. Well, that's all just a euphemism for I listen to you. I care about you.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, just be kind. A lot of times us HR gals, I've got a lot of HR people listening to this. A lot of us and guys and gals and guys, we will hear how a manager has spoken and their demeanor to an employee. And we always look at both sides of the situation. We try to be fair, fun, and friendly. Those are my three
Yeah.
HR words: fair, fun, and friendly. And the thing is, I always tell a manager who's probably overstepped, I say, would if think about this, if your child was at work and was spoken to like that, what would your reaction be? And they'd be like, I'd be angry. I'm like, I know. That's why this employee is angry. You just have to have empathy and be kind. And you can still correct people. You can get them back on the right path. You can do all the things. Just do it with empathy. Oh, so good. Mark, so good. All much more in the book. Did I tell you to buy the book? Everybody go buy the book. Peer-to-peer culture. There you go. It's on the Amazon. Mark Budzinski, Budzinski. All right. It's hard to forget that last name. We'll talk about that last name maybe before we get out of here. All right. So the last question I have for you is instilling a good and vibrant culture. A peer-to-peer culture is just such a good thing. Okay. Okay. We articulate it. We get all the leaders on the right page. How do we keep this up? We got so much else to do.
Yeah, that is the $10,000 question at the end of the day, right? So day in and day out, stuff happens. And one, I think we talked about the senior leaders exhibiting the behavior. So can we be good examples? Number two, can we continue to articulate the culture overtly so nobody loses track of what we're doing here? But I think where it really comes to roost is in what I would call enforcing the culture. So every company at some point or another has had their star salesperson or their star engineer slash inventor who's just been a prima donna. They've been above it all. This culture is for everybody else. It's not for me. And it's difficult, but it's necessary. You either rehabilitate those people or you remove them. And that's like, whoa, that salesperson was salesperson of the year last year. Well, yeah, that's maybe true, but we can't have the culture intoxicated, messed up from somebody's behavior. And I think when we talk about trust, there's a second layer, and I call it trust the trust. So if employees are running around saying, okay, well, this is a trustworthy environment, but I'm watching somebody who is essentially going out in a ditch and they're not behaving accordingly. The first cool thing, Nicole, is, and it's part of the notion of where I came up with the phrase peer to peer, their peers will rat them out, right? So if we're all trying to get to the same place, win the game, scoreboard's clear, our bonuses are associated with it, we're all going the same way. When somebody misbehaves, I will come to you as your peer and say, hey, that's not cool. What's going on here? And if it's truly prima donna behavior, then okay, that's going to get escalated to me as the CEO. But as I said at the outset of our time today, I think over 7 years we may have had to fire 6 or 7 people, and it was all for this reason, right? So you can work with competency issues to a large degree, right? You can train them. You can have
Yes,
driver's ed. You can have somebody in the front seat driving while they're in the passenger seat learning as we go. So I've
100%.
never had any problem with competency as much as this, right? So how do you keep it? I think you have to be clear that it's important. You have to keep it front and center in the way that you talk about the business. And then you have to be prepared to enforce it up to and including removing the people that aren't keen to be part of it.
That's right. That's right. I love that what you said. They might be the number one salesperson. I think that's what you said, or salesperson of the year. But if they're also the jerk of the year, they have to go. And I do so much leadership development training, Mark, and I will have a room full of leaders and I'll say, I'm going to give you a scenario and you can only answer yes or no to this question. There will be no in between. And I did it on Monday and I did it on Tuesday this week. I said, if you have an employee, they have all the competencies, but they are not user friendly. Are they a good employee? And I am shocked at how many go, yes. And I'm like, no, she's missing 50% of the equation.
Yeah.
Gotta be good people and good
Yeah.
at the task.
Yeah. Well, and I say trust the trust. Imagine if the
So
salesperson of the
good. Trust the
year
trust.
imagine if the salesperson of the year continues to be the jerk and we tolerate that. What does that say to everybody else? Oh, the culture is
Jerking is
important
allowed.
unless you're salesperson of the year. Then you can do what you want, right? That we just can't have that.
No, no. And eventually they look at the leader who they're not, your employees are so smart. Let me just say that right now. Your employees, you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. They look up and they go, Mark is allowing that to go on. And you know what he says about culture? He says this, this, and this, but he sure isn't making him do it. And so the guy who's not doing it isn't even the focus of the angst. It's the leader to go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't miss that. All right. Oh my gosh, we have to stop. Mark, write another book. Come back and see me. Let's hang out some more. So maybe he does have a Harry Potter thing going on. We'll see. We'll see what unfolds in the next few years. But this is Peer-to-Peer Culture. It is by Mark Budzinski, What It Takes for Small Businesses to Grow Up. But I bet you if we got this to a big company, it would help them too. That's what I'm saying. All right. It's so good to have you on the show. Where do people find you? If they want help with their data, they go to cleandata.com.
Well, and it's all, this is the interesting thing about the evolution of my career is we're finding that organizational behavior, the way people work together and their thirst for data to make better decisions and advance the agenda of the firm, they have a collision. Those two things come together. So my firm is an advisory firm, Clean Data, and we do those two things. We talk about organizational behavior and the nuts and bolts of how to get your data organized, but do it in such a way that we're bringing real business value to organizations that want to see results. So cleandata.com, cleandatainc.com, and thank you, Nicole. It's been great.
Yeah. All right. Don't forget cleandatainc.com. Don't miss the ink. Just go right. It's right there. Scroll down. Keep going. Keep it. There it is. All right. Very good. Good to be with you all. Love to have you on the show, Mark. Let's build vibrant cultures everywhere we can. If I can help, you can reach me at vibrantculture.com. Thank you, Mark.
All right. You're the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more like-minded listeners. Remember, the journey to building a vibrant culture never stops. Stay inspired, keep nurturing your vibrant culture, and we can't wait to reconnect with you on the next exciting episode of Build a Vibrant Culture podcast.